Hey there, I just got into Clever Investors podcast studio here, where I just did a podcast interview with the one and only Cody Sperber. Cody and I know each other for something like 12, 13 years already. He's one of the guys that have stood through all the times, and he's one of the ones that outlasted everyone. He's obviously a giant in the industry. And yeah, we talked about land flipping. He talked about some of his deals, how he's developing 6 acres into really low-income housing in a way, with double-wide mobile homes outside of town here. Talking about some of his projects, some of my projects. Talk about land flipping. Talk about where we fell on hard times, perhaps in our times. When did we lose money in our businesses? And again, it was a fantastic podcast. Sitting here with the man, Cody Sperber, who just peeked into the door. I just saw him, but hey, we'll put pieces here together, and then make sure you watch the podcast. Hey, how are you, man?
It's good to see you, man. It's been a while.
Yes, it has been.
But we got you here now.
You did. Yeah, you do. Yeah, I'm here. Exactly right.
Are you ready to take action to attain the lifestyle of your dreams?
It's a great way to make a lot of money fast.
The Clever Investor Show.
Hey, what's going on, Clever Investors? Welcome back to the Clever Investor Show. I'm your lucky host, Cody Sperber, the OG Clever Investor. And today in the studio, I'm excited. I have probably one of the guys I've known the longest, at least in the education space. And he is an expert in the land space, in the multifamily space. He's probably one of the biggest educators out there in the land space. He's like how I wholesale houses, this guy wholesales land. And I'm really excited to unpack exactly how he's looking at things right now in 2024. Today in the studio, we got the great Jack Bosch.
All right.
Hey, welcome to the Clever Investor Show,
Thank
brother.
you for having me.
What's your shirt say? Landprofit.com?
Landprofits.com.
Landprofits. You're always marketing.
Of course.
I love it. Yeah.
Aren't you?
Yeah.
It was too. You're boss, but anyway, that's true too.
Yeah, I'm marketing somebody else right now. What the hell? I need to be smart like you. All right. So you've been doing real estate for 22 years.
Right.
And did you start off in the land space?
Yes and no. I finally succeeded in real estate in the land space. Let's put it that way. So we dabbled in all kinds of stuff before, but when I say we, my wife and I, and we failed in most spaces before, just simply because we didn't know what we were doing. So like, I'm originally from Germany, as you can tell from my accent, and you know that anyway. No idea, right? Yeah. Don't sound like Arnold at all, but well, he's Austrian technically, but yeah, we decided we wanted to do real estate because we were sick and tired of the job we had. We couldn't leave the job because we were still in the immigration status of like with a work visa. And if you quit your job or if you lose your job, you basically have 60 days to find another job that's willing to pick up your visa, or you have to leave the country. So I couldn't just quit, but we knew that the job world wasn't for us. So we started to try to find something different. And we first found house wholesaling, and we got a triplex under contract, and we didn't have the first clue about how to estimate repairs, so we estimated everything wrong. As a result, we got the price wrong. As a result, nobody bought the property. As a result, we backed out of the deal. And then this next deal, we wanted to do a rehab, but I was on a job that was 100% travel, and we didn't have credit, we didn't have relationships, we didn't know even how to find somebody to lend us the money, how to find contractors, how to vet contractors. We had no idea, so we canceled that deal too. And then we kind of figured there's people in real estate making money. There's infomercials on television. There's people, there's testimonials. It's got to freaking be possible somehow. So we tried again and again and again. And soon enough, we got into tax delinquent properties, tax lien and tax deeds. And we attended some deed auctions, got outbid, failed at that, bought some tax liens. The tax liens were redeemed 3 weeks later, made $3. We're like, crap, something's got to work sometime. And then eventually we had the idea that what if we take those people that haven't paid their property taxes, which is the only thing, we had no idea that you could go to the CoreLogic or one of these places and actually buy data. We went to the county directly. We got tax delinquent data, which, by the way, none of these services offered back then. And we just got a list of people whose property was coming up for auction. And instead of attending the auction, we sent them a letter. And we basically said like, hey, you guys interested? Your property is about to go for sale in California and you're about to lose it. You get nothing for it. You're interested in selling. And we got a few calls back, and they were all land. So we got a few pieces of land under contract, and we expanded, and then we started flipping those, and we basically put them under contract. We didn't know what for, how much for. So we offered like $100, $400, $500, $1,000 for these kind of cheapo properties. And on one of the lists that we sent something out in Arizona, we got a deal accepted for $400, and we sold it the next day to the neighbor for $4,000. And we're like, okay, well, that works.
Wow.
And
which makes sense. I mean, thank God the neighbor wanted it.
Yeah. In that case, actually a funny story, because the lot was a perfectly buildable lot, but it's in a rural area where there's no water sewer. My water was there, but sewer not. So he needed to put in a septic system. But it hadn't passed this percolation test. So they couldn't put a septic system in place. So it's kind of useless to the owner. And he wanted to give it up to us, so we gave him $400. But the neighbor actually was literally across the street. But on the other side of the lot, there was a farm, and he owned that farm. And without that lot, he needed to drive 3/4 of a mile to access his farm. And with that lot, he could build a driveway into his farm. And therefore, he would have probably paid $10,000 for that thing, but I didn't know that.
He had a use
at that
case
time.
for it.
Yeah, he had a use case for it. So he bought it for $4,000, and we're like, okay, so we didn't have to estimate repairs. We didn't have to go. And we did see the property, because back then there wasn't even, Google Maps wasn't even around. So we did see the property, but we didn't have to estimate repairs. We didn't have to go speak to inspectors. We didn't have to line up money. We just put $400 on the line, which we knew properties in that area were selling for like $10,000 or so. And then the guy next door picked it up the next day for $4,000. We're like, okay, let's do that again. And then the next deal happened 2 weeks later, and then more and more and more deals happened. So I think like 2 months later, we're like, why are we even contacting homeowners? We still don't know anything about houses.
Yeah.
At that time, we still don't know. We knew zero about houses. So let's just leave the houses alone. Let's just go after land. And we became the land experts, and now we've done almost 5,000 deals.
Wow. That's a lot. Yeah, that's good. So let's break down land, right?
Sure.
So right now I'm a newbie. I come to you. I'm like, all right, sensei, teach me. Where do I focus? Am I going out to the rural areas and focusing on the outskirts of where like maybe potential future growth will go? Am I doing infill lots? So we like to focus on 3 kinds of pieces of land. The first one is infill lots. Very simply because, well, interest rates are high, but builders are still building. Properties are still selling. The market is not crashing. So there's demand for those. So the builders, you typically don't get them dirt cheap. You don't get them for $400, but you might get a $100,000 property for $60K, and you can sell it to the builder for $80. The builder's happy because you get a $20,000 discount. The seller's happy, and you're happy. So it's a triple win. That's the infill lots. And obviously, if you get some bigger lots, you can do some more creative stuff. You can perhaps split lots and things like that. But that's usually a little bit more advanced and down the road. The second kind of property we like to focus on is in the path of growth. It's in the outskirts of town. Anywhere from immediately after the last big development to like, if it's a big metro area, to like 50, 75 miles outside of that is still considered kind of the path of growth. And that land was always attractive to some people, but right now, since COVID, it has actually taken off like crazy. Because with COVID, what happened is that people work from home. Like we see, the office market is in shambles, right? People work from home. People don't have to go into the office anymore. So that really allows them to live where they want to live and work where they want to work. And not everyone wants to live in a cookie cutter neighborhood where every house looks the same, when they were in the suburbs and they have to drive downtown or anything like that. So many people want to have their own 2 to 5 acres, half an hour outside of town, where they can build a nice house, have a horse, have some goats, have some chickens, and have that kind of combination of being like having nature around them, but still not be in the middle of nowhere. Because if you need to go into town, if you want to go to a ball game, if you do have to go once a week to go to a business meeting or so, you're still not far away. You can still make it into town. And that was always the case. But in the past, they couldn't move there because they had to be in an office. And most importantly, also because technology wasn't ready. If you think about it, half an hour outside of town, most bigger cities, internet access, spotty. Cell phone reception, spotty. Or there's no internet access and no fiberglass internet, high-speed internet or anything like that. And the cell phone reception is pretty spotty. Well, come along Elon Musk and Starlink, problem solved. You can now be almost anywhere in the United States, have full-blown streaming quality internet, and still be in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
So that is a game changer. Actually, coaches in our company they like that lifestyle. Some of them live on like 10 acres outside of town, and they're like, yep, we have Starlink and we have perfect quality internet. I mean, the other day I was on a conference and they zoomed in the conference. The guy who ran the conference is a friend of Elon Musk. So he got Elon Musk on Zoom, and he was in his plane with Starlink connecting, live chatting with the audience in that thing. So Starlink works apparently even from a plane, right? So not that I know, but other than that, but apparently he does. Right? So bottom line is now we got people that can live where they want to live, work where they want to live, and on top of it, technology is there in terms of internet access. And solar has also come down in price. So if you really want to be off the grid, you can be somewhere. Put a bunch of solar panels up there. We're cheap enough now. Put a house up there. Put a well in place. Have a septic system, and have Starlink. And you are 100% independent of the world, but you only half an hour from town.
Yeah, we just bought 6 acres in Santan, which is, pretty far away, just, like what you would be considering, like on the outskirts where the growth is happening. We got 6 acres, and we're going to split it into 5 1-acre lots. The reason we couldn't for the last acre is because there was a wash running through the land. So some of the land is not buildable. But we are going to subdivide them into 5 lots. All will be about an acre, 1.2 acres, something like that. And then put a double wide manufactured style home on there. It costs us about $300,000 in total cost per property. And we sell them for about $405,000 to $410,000 per property. So there's about $100,000 to $110,000 in markup times 5.
Yeah.
So we took a kind of a dusty, like if you were standing on our lot, like it kind of looks like the terrain's not great and there's this wash running through it. By the time we got done fidgeting around with it, we turned something that everybody else passed on, that we were going to wholesale for maybe $25K, $30K, just to make a quick wholesale. We decided, let's run at this. We really wanted to do these affordable housing out there, and we turned it into a $550,000 almost profit.
Absolutely, yeah. That's exactly like you can take it from just wholesaling, $20,000-$30,000 profit, to a $500,000 profit, and everything in between. You can go to the effort of perhaps of splitting the lots. Right there, you added value because just the lots split into 5 now make somebody else see the vision, and that might have make you a $100,000 profit. Or you can get perhaps just the utilities in place, and now you make a $150,000 profit. Or you can go all the way and make $500,000 profit. It really, at the end of the day, only matters of how deep do you want to get into. And what we typically see with the people that come to us is at the beginning, they just want to wholesale. They just want to wholesale because they have usually not much experience, or perhaps they tried houses and they struggled with it a little bit because of high competition and so on. And they come to us and they're like, I just want to prove the concept that this works. So then they go do 5-10 deals and they're like, oh my God, this actually works. And now it becomes kind of second nature. And after it becomes second nature, they look at those deals. They're like, well, let me not leave $500,000 on the table.
Let's go a little further down.
Let's go a little further over here. And,
what's the average wholesale profit on a piece of land, would you say? Because in houses right now, it's probably 7 to 14 grand, somewhere in there.
It's around 15 for our students. $15,000.
But
that also means there's some $3,000 deals in there, but there's some $150,000 deals in there too, of course. But the same true for you.
What's the biggest assignment that you've ever gotten?
The biggest deal that we have done, we specialized for years in the lower price properties. So most of ours were like $20,000, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 property value deals, like cheap lots that we would make like between $5,000 and $15,000 on. But then the biggest one I've made one time, we bought a property for $1,875 so $1,875 and sold for $86,000. That's one of the larger ones. That's not necessarily. I also made some $100,000 ones and things like that. But from a profit, like I actually bought that property for $1,875 and then sold it. So from a actually return on investment point of view, that was the highest return on investment because it was something
can't beat that.
It was something like a 7,000% return or something like that.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I just want to clarify real quick because I was just kind of going through it. You said there's 3 types of land to go through. So what's the third?
The third one is larger recreational acreage. Basically, the buyers typically for that used to be the weekend warriors. Basically, the guys having a good job, loving the outdoors, be stuck in the office from like Monday to Thursday afternoon or Monday to Friday, and then Friday afternoon would take their big RV, their $200,000 RV, a bunch of toys in the back, and go up into an hour, 2-hour drive outside of town and just horse around on the land all weekend long. Come back, dust the entire Sunday night, and then do it again.
So their plan's
also
not to really develop it. They just like having a slice of land that they can go play on.
So traditionally, that was the buyer. But with the same things that just happened with COVID and stuff like that, even that land now becomes more feasible to actually spend weeks at a time on it. Because again, with a solar panel and Starlink and
you're up and
a
running.
well and stuff like that, you're up there. They can stay there weeks hunting or working from there, and then you just every once in a while take your RV and have it emptied out and refill the water or something like that.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's typically the three kind of buyers, the three kind of properties. There's a couple more buyer types that fit into these different categories. Like, for example, a future retiree is a typical buyer that we target. It's a lot of people in their 50s right now start realizing that, unfortunately, in the United States, about 70% of all the people over 50 don't have enough money saved up to even survive one emergency, medical emergency, big broken out car, total car, or something like that. So how in the world are they going to be able to retire?
I mean, think about that, Jack. The average retiree couple spends $300,000 in medical during their retirement.
Yeah.
Most people don't have $300,000 saved up.
That's right. Most people don't. And then, Medicare and Medicaid and so on pay for some of that or a lot of that. But the average Social Security, I just looked it up the other day, it's under $1,600 a person.
Yeah.
So the average rent in a market like where we both are, Phoenix, is $1,500 a month or something like that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, what is 1,600 times 12? That's less than $19,000 a year. I mean, that's like you're poor.
Right. And that's
doesn't sound like the golden years to me.
No. And that's unfortunately the future for a large number of Americans. Well, some of them get smart. Some of them, there's three groups that they fall into. The ones that put the head in the sand and basically like, well, I don't do anything. I'll just never retire. And they'll work into the 70s and basically die broke, right? The second ones are the really smart ones. They say like, I got to figure out a way to make money. So they're paying attention to webinars like this or like to podcasts like this, and they're educating themselves, and it's never too late to get started and make a ton of money. And the third ones are the ones that are basically saying like, well, if I can't retire, if after paying my rent because they don't have a house, or if they have a house, they still have a mortgage on it and they can't pay the mortgage. If they're like, if I don't have a house, if I can't even pay my rent anymore when I'm retired because I have no money left, I got to go somewhere where I have a lower cost of living. And a lot of them are looking out and looking for particularly the mobile home style lots. So what you're doing is exactly the right thing, because they're looking for lots that they can perhaps even put a used single wide mobile home on there that they can buy for 20, 30 grand somewhere. But they need to get the land. So they're buying the land from us, but they don't have the money to actually pay for the land. So what they do with us, what we offer in most of our land is actually seller financing. So we wholesale, but we also sell a lot of our land. We're seller financing. Basically, we ask them to give us like a 20% down payment and then they pay the rest of the land for over the next 5, 10, 15 years. So in that case, if it's like a $30,000 deal that you get under contract, and we get those deals for cheap. Like even my 16-year-old daughter is just closing on one of her land deals. She's a land flipper. She's closing on a deal right now that she got for $6,000, and she's selling it for $40,000 with a $15,000 down payment and then monthly payments of $500 for the next 5.5 years. So in other words,
I love that you got your daughter into this. This is great.
I absolutely love it. We're so over the moon excited, and she is bouncing off the walls too. So she's like, she got the $15,000 down payment, pays for the land, and puts $9,000 of profits into her pocket, and then she gets $500 a month in basically spending money. She's smart enough to not spend it, to reinvest it though. But essentially, from a buyer side, that makes perfect sense, because banks don't lend on land. The buyer can't just go to the bank and say like, I need a $40,000 or $30,000 or $25,000 loan. So if they don't have the 40 grand for the land, they're dead in the water.
Yeah.
But if we only pay $6,000 for the land, I'm gladly taking a $15,000 down payment and then have monthly payments coming in, because the down payment is higher than the cost of the land. So it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's like no money in the
No
deal.
risk.
You can do it as a double closing where you use the buyer's money to pay the seller. Don't even contribute any money to the closing. And in that case, it's not an assignment. In that case, it's a double closing with a note involved. And it's basically creative financing.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. And right now we sell probably 70% of our deals with seller financing.
Well, you're a good dad, Jack. You're a good dad. See, I would have, if I taught my son how to do this and he made, what'd you say, $9,000?
Mm-hmm.
He'd gamble it away. He's just turning 15 years old. He's already a degenerate. You know, it's like the difference between me and you. You're a good dad.
Well, I have a girl too. Girls are different.
I'm just messing with you. But let's talk about land financing. You mentioned you can't just roll into a bank and get qualified for a loan on land. Why not?
Well, very simply, ask the banks. No, but just very simply, no. That from my understanding is that very few banks actually offer bank financing. Back in 2005, 6, 7, there was a bank in Texas that did, and then they got into trouble with it. But the point is, lenders are by definition incredibly risk averse. So what they might give you a construction loan. Of course, they give lots of construction loans, and if you contribute the land, right? So
they want you to build the house on.
They want you to build a house on it. So then they're protected. First of all, they have a hard time being able to value land, even though it's really simple. We can talk about that in a second. The second thing, the second time though, is that if the land just sits there and the land isn't entitled, doesn't have utilities on it, doesn't have underground water, sewer, and so on to it, basically they're just looking at something that doesn't appreciate, that nobody's doing anything with it, and they just don't want to have a part of that. So they just want to have only a part of something where they're very reasonably quickly are in a very, very safe position. So if you get a construction loan, you build a house on it, guess what? Of course.
They know you're going to improve the
They know you're going to improve the loan. The value goes up. They're in a safe position, right? If you're taking a farmland, they finance farmland because it's an income property. Right? It produces income. There's a cash flow stream, and with a cash flow stream, they can apply a cap rate to it. They can do all the kind of traditional kind of thing. It's a business. Yeah. That makes sense. Just a piece of land that sits out there in the outskirts of town, or 67 acres outside raw land somewhere outside of Shola, Arizona, or any other part of the country. They're just sitting there and there's like, we don't know what to do with it. And if we don't know what to do with it, we're not going to touch it. It's
so if you can't go to a bank for that, can you go to a hard money lender? Or is there any specialty lenders at a higher interest rate?
There are some. So in our universe, for example, we have created, because first of all, we have taught so many people. We've brought over 1,000 people to millionaire status. So a lot of them.
No big deal, by the way. You just said that like it's not, just 1,000 people turned into millionaires.
We're super excited about that. We're working on making it that 2,000 right now. Yeah. But in that process, obviously, there's lots of people in our universe that now have money. They have lots of money. They understand land. They're comfortable with land. If they give somebody a land loan and they have to foreclose on it, they know how to resell it. Right. So therefore, they're like, okay with it. So there are some people who come in, particularly in JVs as private money lenders, and those kind of things. So they do exist, and they like the kind of the couple $100,000 kind of lots. They come into those. They give you the money if you have a clear plan of what to do with it. Because ideally, if the land is worth $400,000, you get it for, or $350,000, you get it for $200,000. There's still enough buffer for them that if they foreclose, they can go sell it. So this exists. We have lots of them. Typically in our Facebook group, somebody says like, I got this deal and so on. And right away, a few people coming like, send me a DM, and they work out whatever they work out. We don't get a piece of it. We don't get involved with it. We just create the community for it to happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. How do we evaluate land? Because I have been in a couple situations where even like on houses, like I would buy, I bought a house. I got a house under contract many, many years ago. That was a house, but it also had like 5 acres or 4 acres of farm land attached to it. And all of these like 5-acre parcels were up against the freeway. And it was very hard to value because, one, not a lot of properties traded. This one still had a house on it, so it was a little easier. But I mean, the valuation swung so much, I couldn't even tell if I was offering a good amount, a bad amount, if I should take the offer that my cash buyer eventually made for me, if I was leaving money on the table. So
yeah, there's 5 ways to value land. But actually, can I quickly go back to the other question? Just there's one thing I wanted to that popped into my head. Is like you mentioned about lenders and things like that. That's all important and they exist. The typical process, though, that when somebody comes and starts with land is, again, they wholesale the first few deals. Then they're like, okay, I know how to do this. Then they sell financing. They offer seller financing on the next bunch of deals, build up cash flow, passive cash flow, because it's pure cash flow. And then usually it's the third step that they go and say like, well, I really like this piece of land. I want to split it. I want to develop it. I want to do this. And what happens in that case, they won't have any problem getting lenders from the community because it's not their first deal. And that's really the point I want to make. Typically, when the lenders come and give somebody money, they typically don't come and give it to somebody who has never done a land deal ever before. They like to give it to somebody who has already shown that they can make money with those pieces of land. So therefore, and it's actually just a natural progression. You go, your first thing is like, land? What the heck is that? How do I make money with land? Oh, let me wholesale some pieces. Okay, make some money. Oh, let me sell financing some. And then you have 10, 15, 20 deals under your belt, and you come and now you come across this 67 acres or something really equally beautiful. And you're like, I want to do something different with it. Who is with me? And by that time, everyone is like, yeah, I'm with you because you know what you're doing. You know, this works. You're a pro by now. Let me give you money. And it's a much lower risk for the lender because they're dealing with a pro. Right. So with that said, let's go into valuation.
Yeah. And just on that real fast is most of the land deals I've ever seen, seller financing so normal in this space that it's not like you're pitching the landowner on seller finance. They probably purchased it on seller finance.
Yeah.
So they're familiar with it, or they've dealt with seller finance. So it's not like you have to like normally train up the landowner.
Right. So, I mean, you can do seller financing on the purchasing side from the seller. When I talk about seller financing is, I mean, offering when you
I
sell.
knew what you meant, but I'm just saying like either way,
people
are buying, people are selling. Seller finance in that world is much more common.
Yeah.
Nowadays, like you got the Pace Morbys of the world, you got, me out there teaching creative finance, and it's like people are just getting caught up to seller finance.
Yeah, exactly right.
But in land, it's super common.
Yeah, it's super common, and if you do it the right way, it's super profitable. Because again, in many cases, just an example of my daughter, you have no money in the deal. It's just you have zero money in the deal, and you get cash flow where you're the lender. You have no responsibility to fix anything. You just simply get electronic checks in the mail.
Mailbox money. I love
mailbox
that.
money. Yeah.
All right, you said there's 5 ways to evaluate land.
5 ways to evaluate the land. The first one is the most obvious one. I always ask people, they're like, I don't know how to value land. It's like, well, how do you value houses? And they're like, well, comps. Well, comps are available for land too. Because again, the land that we're dealing with, I don't know, sometimes people might be thinking this is odd-shaped, weird land in a place where this is the only one. Well, that's the exception, really. The typical piece of land is like a 2 or 5 acre lot in the outskirts of town where they chopped up 100 of them into 2 acres or 100 of them into 5 acres. And there's currently 7 for sale and 5 have sold in the last year. So number one, in land, you can go beyond 90 days. You can go all the way up to a year because the price changes are a little slower than in the house world. So
you can go back in time more.
You can go back in time more, which therefore usually gives you a bigger pool of comps.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so first thing, very simple, look at sold comps. You look out there, pull up Zillow, you see, here's my property. Around it my property is 5 acres. Around it are 5 other 5 acre properties. They're all listed for $75,000 to $80,000. What's the value of my land? Done. Now, the way we had to start doing it, and the way you still have to do it if you're in a state that's either a non-disclosure state, like Texas and so on, where they don't have to disclose what actually they sold the property for, is you have to switch on Zillow to listed properties. Now, we had to start that way because back then, Zillow didn't even exist. The MLS was offline almost.
But you're going to be close enough with a listed.
Yeah, we had to go by listed values. And what we have learned is that that in land, properties are typically listed about 15% above what they sell for. So typically if they're listed for $90,000, well, they're probably going to sell for $75,000. So and you can see that on Zillow today. If you go in the same area, see 5 properties sold for 75, you switch to listed, you see them listed at 85 or 90. Similar properties in the area. So therefore you go, you take listed, it's the second one, you take what they have, subtract 10 to 15%, you're at the market value.
Yeah,
you're close enough.
Yeah.
And since you're not offering full market value, you're typically offering like 10 to 50% of market value. We're getting these properties at below half market value. You can be off a little bit and it's still not the end of the world.
Now, are people selling land the same way? And I don't want to take us away from the 5 ways yet.
Wherever you
but
want to
like,
go.
is there still the same similar motivations of why I'm selling my land? Is there still distressed sellers?
There's very few distressed
You
sellers
get what I'm saying?
because
Why am I going to sell you my land at at 30, 40, 50% off?
So some of the reasons are the same, but per se many are some of them are different. So distressed sellers are very rare because most of the land doesn't have a loan on it. Most of the land they own it free and clear. So it's more like of a garage sale mentality that people have. Often they have passed away, and you're dealing with heirs. About a third of our deals we're working with heirs, and heirs. Like I read the statistic in the United States that the typical heir sells their parents' home if they inherit a house within 72 days of them passing, which I think is ridiculously fast. But so within 72 days, they sell the house. How fast do you think they want to sell a piece of land that doesn't have the potential for cash flow, that doesn't have a potential to be rented, that just sits there and eats up property taxes?
Yeah.
They want to sell that thing even faster. They don't care what they get for it. They just simply see like, man, I inherit this piece of land. I don't do anything with it. I need to mow the grass. I need to get the county violations off taken care of. Like when it rains a while, we're not used to rain, but in other parts of the country, it rains a lot. And so if this is a property that's an infill lot, and every 6 weeks you have to send somebody out there to mow the grass, otherwise it becomes a code violation and a nuisance. You very, very soon are sick and tired of holding on to that piece, and you're willing to take a steep discount to just get it off the books.
Are you teaching your students to go pull like the probate list and the inherited property list for land?
Yes and no. You typically don't need to, because if you just get the land list, they're all in there. And if you focus on the certain price ranges and we go at all of them. So therefore, by definition, the probate and tax delinquent one and all,
because there's not as much anyway, so you might as well just go after all of them.
Well, depending on where you are, if you focus on a narrow niche, then you can go after all of them. Yes, exactly. Right. You can, however, go after tax delinquent. You can go after probate things and so on. I think it's so much more effort than it's worth it. Because if you just simply go after land that people own, even the non-distressed people, that's our biggest discovery. When we started in the tax delinquent world. And there we found that distressed people, in a way, they were distressed in the point that, no, they weren't distressed. They were just about to lose their property. But not because they didn't have the money, not because they couldn't pay the property taxes. They just decided not to want this property anymore. So I literally met sellers that drove up with a Mercedes and signed the deed in front of me for $100 for their piece of land. And we turned around and sold it for $35,000 or so. So they didn't, and they owed only like $2,000. They could have easily paid that. We had a conversation. They told me what they do. They gave me an indication of what they make. And high income earning people are just like, I don't care about this thing anymore. I don't want it anymore. I got it from my dad. I paid property taxes for another 10 years. I just don't care. My kids don't want it. I never go out there. I don't give a crap. I don't want it.
Just give me whatever you
give me. What you want. Go. So exactly.
Wow, that's interesting.
It's a little bit different. So you're dealing with heirs. You're dealing with people that just simply don't want it anymore. You're dealing often also with a little bit older people that basically where one spouse has passed away and perhaps they had dreams for the property and they wanted to do something on the property, and then now that has gone out the window. Or perhaps they bought something in Florida, but they live in Minnesota, and now the grandkids are born and they don't want to move away from there anymore because they want to be around the little babies and so on. And now could they all just simply go and list it with a realtor? They could. But that's the next thing. Most realtors are not trained on how to sell land, because you actually sell land quite differently than you sell houses. Houses, every realtor know. Do a broker's open, do an open house, get the pictures taken by sunset with a good photographer, stage the house, declutter the house, et cetera, market to the right kind of people, and put it in the magazine, into different things, depending on what kind of house it is. and you'll get a buyer. In the land side, you can't do any of that. I mean, nobody's gonna go on a broker open and tap around a piece of land out there, right? No, you can't really stage it, right? You can take some good photography and drones and things like that, and that's a good idea. But most realtors don't know how to do that, don't have a clue, and so on. So what they do is they treat it like the ugly duckling, and they just simply take one picture from Google Earth and just slap it on there, and they take it on as a favor, but they spend no effort on it. So as a result, you got this ugly listing with no description, no indexing, no dream building, because what you need to do in land is actually dream build. You need to tell people, imagine what you can do here. This is the perfect retirement spot. You're only 5 miles from this town with a church, with a grocery store, with a Starbucks. You're only 5 miles from this lake. You're only 2 miles from the interstate that gets you into town in 35 minutes. The property, and at this point, I haven't even talked about the land. The land is secondary to the description what's around it. So realtors don't know that because they're used to describing it as a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, split floor plan in the best school district. Well, that doesn't work over here, so they don't know what to do with it. So as a result, even sellers sometimes listed with the realtors, they put a butt ugly listing out there. They don't sell the property because they don't know how. And then half a year later, like, well, I guess my property's not worth much. And our letter hits or our marketing hits. And they're like, yeah, I'll give it to you for whatever you want because obviously it's not worth much.
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying. So it's like when they wanted to advertise for the movie Paranormal Activity, I think was the name of the scary movie. Instead of showing an advertisement about the movie, they just put a camera on the crowd and showed all the people getting scared to death watching this movie. And it was like they were selling the benefit, not the actual product.
Exactly right.
And you got to do that with the land.
You got to do that with the land.
Because if I want to feel that fear and that emotion like those people I'm watching, I'm like, oh shit, I got to go see this movie.
Yeah.
I got to visualize what I'm going to do with this land. And most, unless you're really great at sales, you're not thinking like that. Like you said, a lot of people take it on as a favor.
A lot of the people come to us have they have no experience in sales whatsoever. Like there's people, this is their first business that they've ever done. They never talk to anyone. They're scared to death to talk to people. So in those kind of things, most of the inquiries you get is this by text, like by messenger. It's like, is this still available? And then we teach them how to actually ask some closing questions and get it on there. But we have closed lots of properties simply by texting back and forth because the listing does the selling.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so you can do comps.
Yeah, you can do comps. You can do listed comps. Then you can also, if it's a larger acreage in the more rural areas and there's nothing else in a similar size available, then you have to break it down by acre. And then basically,
just what's the value of an acre?
The value of an acre in the area? And then just keep in mind, for example, in rural areas, the larger the acreage, the lower the price per acre. And the smaller the acreage, the higher the price per acre. Because like the difference for somebody who wants to have their own mini ranch between 40 acres and 60 acres is not 50% more. They're happy with 20 acres. They got 40. Great. What do I want 60 for? Yeah, I'll pay you a little bit more for the 60, but not much more than the 40. So the larger the thing, it's almost you get a volume discount.
Okay.
So that's so you can adjust for that a little bit, and you see that very quickly. You look up what some property sold. You see a 10 acre sold for $50,000, so $5,000 an acre. A 20 acre sold for $80,000. Well, that's only $4,000 an acre. 100 acres sold for $3,500 an acre. So therefore, you see if you have a 70 acre parcel, you put it right in there, and you got your price per acre. And then the fourth way is actually you can in some states, in some conditions, it's not very reliable, can use the assessed value to approximate a value. Like in Arizona.
Go to the tax assessor's website, look at the land assessed value. And
exactly right. Like in Florida, assessed value is about 90% of market value.
Have they ever got that right?
No, but it also depends. The tax assessors are usually about a year or two behind the market. So if you're in a stable market, like right now, we're in a fairly stable market. Right now, within probably the next 6 months, the assessors are going to catch up to the valuations. And then their actually numbers are fairly reliable. Now, if the market then takes a big spike again, they're going to be behind again. If the market takes a downturn, they're going to be behind again. But in a stable market, for example, in Arizona, assessed values are typically about 2/3 of market value. In Florida, they're about 85 to 90% of market value. In
So each state is a little different.
Yeah, in Arkansas, they're 20% of market value. You kind of need to know that, otherwise you give it a completely wrong value.
Yeah.
But it gives you a ballpark indication. And the fifth one is the one for the use for the infill lots, because in infill lots are often a situation where you have a street, 35 houses, one empty lot, and there are no comps. So in that case, you need to revert back to what an appraiser would do, which is an appraiser gives a value to the land and a value to the house. And basically, typically in the normal American neighborhood, where houses are like in the $400,000-$500,000 range, land is worth about 20 to 25% of the house value. So if you have this situation, you have an empty lot, you have a bunch of $500,000 houses there, that land is worth $125,000.
Got it.
That's the five ways.
Yeah. That's actually, I've never heard that before, but that makes sense. It's an easy kind of general rule of thumb to do that. That's cool. Look, all right. So first off, thanks for sharing a lot of that land experience that you have. I want to kind of like zoom out to like some entrepreneurial conversations. Like you've done really well in your career, made quite a bit of money and have had some success. What was the big difference that took you from, say, 6 figures to 7 figures?
That's a good question. It was more of a decision on whether or not we want to take on the learning that it requires to become a leader of a team. Because in 6 figures, you can run this on your own. Right? And then it's, in my case, my wife and I, we hired a couple of basically assistants. Nowadays, virtual assistants. Back then, we had just hired local people that worked with us. And with that, we were able to go to the mid 6 figures, right? So made a few $100,000 a year. It's nothing wrong with that.
Small team,
work from home, and just do deal after deal after deal after deal. What took us from there to multiple 7 figures and taking this business into 8 figures was really a decision. We actually went to Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins went to UPW, and because we went there with a question is like, what do we do? Do we just keep it where it is right now, where we are kind of like we were actually more tied to the business at that level than we were when we ultimately scaled it. And we came back and was like, we're frustrated right now. We were frustrated. We had a business with like 2 assistants, Michelle and I. We're doing about 150 deals a year. And we each of them about the $10,000 kind of like profit. So it's already a 7-figure business in that case. Before it was just Michelle and I, and we were just doing perhaps in our first year 63 deals, make perhaps like something like $400,000 or $500,000, and we were. And that was just pure hustle. It was a pure hustle. It's like you don't show up, you don't do a deal, you don't get paid, right? And then from there we grew it into the small group. But in the small group, we realized that we didn't have the experience of building teams, of leading people, so it was even more frustrating experience. And so it was like, what do we do? Do we shrink back to just it being the 2 of us, or do we decide to blow up? And after coming back from Tony Robbins, you can imagine what the answer was, right? Yeah. We came back and we were like, "Rawr,
making all your power moves."
Exactly, making the power moves. And within I think 12 to 18 months, we were an almost 8-figure company. So we basically almost like 10x'd in a matter of 18 months after that. We had a team of 20 people at that point of time. We had even an HR manager. We had, and at that point, what it really gave us is the freedom to, first of all, it was a stressful time because you have to level up in order to do that. There's a time of intense personal growth. But then also after that, it also actually for the first time gave us the time to actually take time off, because now we had a team in place to actually do things that didn't all depend on us.
Yeah, I love that. Have you ever been broke before?
I grew up pretty broke. I mean, not like sob story broke, living in the car and things like that. But my dad's a high school teacher. My mom's stay-at-home mom, and they brought us up and brought us to college on one salary, which means they saved every penny they had, and any money I needed other than a $20 a month allowance, I had to make for myself. And so I started working in like liquor store at age 18 and driving people's like driving cases of beer into bars and restaurants and things like that. I worked as a waiter. I worked as I see all these cameras around here. Like I worked for German television as a college student. There's like the handheld camera, which now is all wireless. Back in the days, it actually had a big cable behind it. And there's a guy standing behind the cameraman with the cable to give him
You were the
always
cable
enough.
guy?
I was a cable guy.
All right.
I was the cable guy. But the nice part of it was it gave me the opportunity to go to like international soccer games and like political events and see the president of Germany and the chancellor of Germany and things like that. So it was kind of a lot of fun, but I was always broke because I had a broke mentality at that time. So and so basically whatever came in immediately went out. And so at the end of the month, I ended up every month with zero. But I wasn't like poor broke in the sense that my parents had a normal house. They had a car that I got to use. But for example, I got my first car at age 27 when I came to the US. I didn't even have a car before.
Wow. All right. But you've never, as you started making money, went broke.
No.
Which is a blessing. That's good.
Never.
And then, all right, so let me ask you it in another way. What was your number one biggest blunder that you can ever think of in real estate and business that you look back on and you're like, fuck, I got beat up on that one a little bit. Was it a business decision? Was it a partnership fell apart? Was it you got sued in this deal? Was it you bet on something and it was the wrong bet and you lost money on it? Or was it none of that? Are you the golden boy and you've never had any issues?
I'm not the golden boy, but we pride ourselves to be extremely, I say that with pride. And sometimes I'm sure it has cost me money by not being overly aggressive out there, but we're usually very conservative in what we invest in and what we do. So we have lost money only a few times. But one time is we just simply invested in this technology company out there that was making these great claims that they could do all kinds of stuff. And we put $100,000 or $130,000 into that, and that's poof. Now the company still exists, was taken over, and they're trying to rescue it. But my expected time to get money back on that is now like when I'm 85 or so.
400 years.
It's like not
Dude,
gonna
you know,
happen.
I've never ever done well investing in somebody else's thing.
Yeah.
I just haven't. If it's one of my companies, if it's one of my projects, I can control it.
Exactly.
And
that's as entrepreneurs, particularly real estate entrepreneurs, we're just control freaks. That's just how it is.
I just lost $100,000 in a cauliflower company.
Okay.
They made cauliflower crust, pizza crust, cauliflower products. Sounded good, looked good, loved the product. They went out of bit. They were in every Costco, all these Walmarts, like all these stores online, everywhere. And I don't know if it was just the last year. Market turn, what happened? They just went belly up, and it was like you get a notification like business is done, your money's gone, and you're like, cool,
crap.
And I'll just go myself right
there. You
like,
go.
Cool. But it was a good reminder for me to just like stick to what I know.
Yeah, the same here. So, I mean, we also do multifamily deals, right? So in the land space, I think I can count the number of times that I lost money on a land deal by two hands, and each time I lost like $1,000. And usually it's because we didn't even follow our own advice anymore. We thought we got cocky. We're like, now I know this area. It's all good. These properties are all buildable. Well, I hadn't paid attention that this area are all half-acre lots. This area, all quarter-acre lots, and the minimum building size is half an acre. So we bought those for just a little bit less than we bought those, and all of a sudden we were stuck with a bunch of unbuildable lots that we had to sell for $1,000 less. The simple thing, even in my programs, I tell people, don't do that. Go do the analysis every single time. But I got cocky and I basically started to believe my own press releases and started
just do as I say, not as I do.
Right, and that's like 10 deals, so that's not a whole lot. But we obviously we once we got into the bigger things, because basically we make all this money in land flipping. Once after a while we realized that even with the seller financing deals, they get paid off at some point of time. Right, so you have to rebuild your cash flow. We built that cash flow up to almost $80,000 a month. And 71,000 at one time, but it was higher than that before. And so it is $70,000 to $80,000 a month in pure passive cash flow. But then if you don't keep going, which of course we did, but if you don't keep going, at some point of time it dwindles down. So then you have to rebuild it every 7 to 10 years. And at some point of time, it's like, how many times in my life do I want to rebuild this? And it's like, well, not a whole bunch of times. So I mean, of course, I'll rebuild it while I'm loving to do it anyway, but I don't want to have to rebuild it in order to get paid for another bunch of years. So we started taking money off the table in 2009. So we were not hit by 2009. We did not suffer devastating losses in that kind of 2008, 9, 10 time. Instead, we actually were able to take the cash flow that we were making, because land flipping continued to work during that time, and put that in single families. And we bought a bunch of single families here in Phoenix that we still own that now went up 10x and things. So again, there we actually made money during that time period. But currently, we're in a couple of deals where we're probably going to lose money, and those
multifamily deals.
Multifamily deals,
Yeah.
And but it's not yet
Why?
sure.
Just because the financing was
it's
the wrong financing?
one. I invested with a couple of other people instead of just putting the money into my own deals where I have control, like exactly what you just said. I invested with some other guys that I know, that I thought are good operators and things like that, but they're mightily struggling on some of those deals. Like, so I think on 4 from 5 deals, I'm gonna get my money back on 3. On 1, a 3 with a small return. On 1, I'm probably gonna get, if I'm lucky, my money back. On 1, I'm gonna take a bigger loss. That's okay. Percentage loss. At least we only put like $150,000 into that one and not $1 million or so. But then we're dealing with a different kind of scenario, which is basically I'm losing money by choice. Let's put it that way. Because
what do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is like, so we bought 8 years ago, 2016, we bought a 94-unit apartment complex just outside of New Orleans, Louisiana, with a partner. That's part of the thing. Like, so the partner is the other kind of set. We bought that deal and we brought it up, did all the CapEx things, did all the pieces. We were the junior partner because this was our first large apartment complex. So the other guy took the lead and he fixed the roof and he did all the upgrades and things like that. Then it was 2002, we were like a month away from putting that thing on the market. Just needed to evict a couple of tenants and put some new tenants in when Hurricane Ida comes and destroys the place.
Oh, wow.
Causes about $5 million or $7 million in damages, basically destroys it, floods it from the roof, from the ceiling down. Everything is like stuff hanging down, everything destroyed. An insurance company basically says, oh, very good, very nice. We're not paying. Simply not paying. Lloyd's of London, never insure with them. We're simply just not paying. I think what happens is Lloyd's of London that year had like a $2 billion loss because there's hurricanes happening all over the world. And they basically, executive decision up there, delay every payment that you can for as long as you can so that our year doesn't look even worse. So they just haven't paid. So now we're suing the insurance company, but at the same time, our partner about a year and a half ago says like, Jack, I'm running out of money, which is, by the way, not true, but I'm running out of money. I can't keep putting money into this deal anymore because now we're down to 22% occupancy. So we have 78% empty. So in other words, at 94 units, that's like 24 units occupied or 22 units occupied and 72 units empty. And the loan has to be paid every month and et cetera, et cetera. So he's been supplementing that and paying for some of the engineers to come out because now the insurance company sends engineers out. We send engineers out. And eventually says like, Jack, I can't keep doing that. Why don't we sell that thing? Well, I looked in the market and what we thought we could get on the property would basically pay the loan. It's a low loan, only $3 million, so we can pay the loan. But our investors, we had $2 million worth of investors in the deal, would basically lose their money. And that's why I say by choice, because I believe my reputation is more important than a financial loss on one deal. So I basically says like, you know what, partner, no names mentioned. Happy to mention the name offline. Partner, move out of the way. I'm going to take over, and we're going to bring this thing back. So over the last year and a half, my wife and I invested $3.5 million of our own money to fully rehab that property. Fully to the degree that we could. Is there more things that we should do? Yes, if we really would rehab it fully, we'd probably have to spend a few more million, replace every kitchen and things like that. But the kitchens are functional right now. The countertops are functional and things like that. They look good. They look fine. They're still a little wobbly and so on. So if really the insurance would pay, the insurance would have had to pay for all of that. But since insurance haven't paid, we brought in new flooring, new rings. We ripped out the walls, ripped out the ceilings, new air conditions, everything. Spent $3.5 million in the last year and a half to bring that thing back to completion. As of this week, it's 100% completed. We're at 59% occupancy again already. In the next couple of months, we'll be like 70, 80% occupancy. And in the meantime, we're suing the insurance. There's a hope and expectation that sometime this year we settle with them. And with the settlement, we hopefully get our money back. And then with the sale of the property, every one of the investors gets 100% of their investment back, potentially even with a small return.
Wow.
And
you're a fighter, dude.
Yes,
it takes some balls to step
cost me
up
some
like that.
hair. That cost me some color of my hair, turned more even more gray, things like that. We basically looked at it. Could we have walked away from that and basically it's like, sorry, that was you guys' risk. Apologize for that. Yes, but I don't think that's the right thing to do. I could have when if all said and done, in the best case scenario, everyone gets their money, everyone gets a return, I get my money back, and I even make some money on it. In an expected scenario, everyone gets their money back, and we probably lose like $500,000 at the end of the day. In the worst case scenario, which I don't really see happening, we would actually lose more money. But is it worth losing $500,000 in order to have the goodwill of everyone around that trusted in you? When you want to continue doing multifamily for many, many years, and you want to keep having those same investors trust you and invest in you? And I think the answer is
I've had
yes.
situations, not many, but a couple, where lenders put money up, shit went sideways for whatever reasons, and we paid them their expected returns, even though it didn't exist. Like we just came out of pocket and just made them pay. Exactly. And I've had deals where we've made, let's call it 60K, 70K in profit on a house flip that somebody else put the money up for. They were expecting to make 125K, and we were expecting to make 300K. And everybody, we were going to have about 425K profit in this deal. It evaporated down to like a 70K profit because the market turned. And we gave all 70K to the investor. We took nothing, and it was like, that I wish we would have made something.
And
but
that's
sometimes
why you're in business for as long as you've been in business.
You got to do the right thing,
And that's why we've been in business for as long as we have been in business. And that's why some other people have come up and they're disappearing again because they just don't do the right thing. So yes, have we lost money on that? Right now, we lost $3.5 million so far, but we hopefully get those back by the end of the year. I'm pretty darn confident that I'll get at least the vast majority back.
I'll be praying for you. And fuck you, Lloyd's of London.
There you go.
Just kidding.
I agree.
Please insure my shit.
I'm not kidding.
He's not kidding. I don't have any issues with Lloyd's of London, but that sucks, dude. I hate when insurance companies jack you around like that. It's like, isn't that why we have insurance? Just why you got to make it complicated? But
the good news is that we actually just had a conversation with our attorneys yesterday. They're working on hopefully a settlement and things like that. But I was like, I'm telling them, hey guys, we're like 6 weeks away from having, or perhaps 12 weeks away from having this property 100% stabilized, 100% running, cash positive again. And at that point, I can wait for my money.
Yeah.
Like we're in a position of strength here. We don't have to give in because that's what the insurance companies do. They
outlast you.
Exactly. They count on you not being able to last that long. So at some point of time, you throw up the white flag and say, like, give me something, and they throw you a bone, and then you walk away. And that's how they're operating. They're minimizing their losses. Well, with our case, that won't happen. So
well, I'll be praying for you and your family and your investors. Hopefully, you guys get through that. How do people find you? So you got landprofits.com. What happens when I go there?
Well, if you go to landprofits.com, you just go to our website. I think the better place where we have, let's say, a 30-day blueprint where people can actually go learn a little bit more about how land works. And it's a 30-day step. It's like a PDF. It's actually very detail-oriented. They can go under Land Profit Fun. So fun, like having fun. Landprofitfund.com. They can get that. Other than that,
you just threw the fun in there, trying to make land fun.
Of course, land is fun. And then obviously social media. I have my podcast. It's called very, very modestly the Jack Bosch Show. And
you don't say.
Yeah, of course.
I need the Cody Sperber Show.
There you go. Yeah. And because I don't just talk about land, the other day I had a local, you might know him, Mark Tabell, local celebrity chef. He is like a television show here in Phoenix. He has 4 or 5 restaurants and 2 in the airport and things like that. He's a good friend of mine. I had talked to him about how he took his business very successfully through COVID. Right? When most businesses went out of businesses, or lots of restaurants went out of business, he he had to do a lot, but he made it through. So it's an entrepreneurial class that we talked about there. I have my attorney coming up. That's I think next week or in a couple of weeks. Our attorney coming up on the podcast and talking about all kinds of contract issues and problems that people don't do and so on. And we have like a variety of things. It's not just a land flipping show. It's an finance, entrepreneurship kind of show. That's why I didn't want to call it
Jack Bosch show.
the
Go
Land
check
Profit
that
Show.
out.
Yeah.
And you said Land Profit Fund.
Fun.com. And then
right,
on
there
social
you go.
media, I'm at Jack Bosch pretty much everywhere. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram.
Well, thank you for being on the show, man. Really appreciate it. I've been trying to get this guy on the show for a couple months now, but he's always traveling the world.
I know. I was gone.
Enjoying the good life. Where are you? I'm going to Europe. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Oh, wait. But I'm glad that we were able to get you on. And you're the first land guy we've had on here where
Awesome.
we've really like broken that down. And hopefully somebody out there that maybe is struggling in wholesaling, try land.